The end is near for Microsoft, Windows, and Edge becomes a gaming browser. Happy Friday, friends. This is take number 2 because my computer decided to just do that little boop thing where it says a USB device is no longer connected, despite it still is. And so I don't know if the last one actually works. We're starting it over because we love the Friday podcast. Either way, the end is near, my friends. And I don't mean the end of anything. Well, I mean, it is kind of significant, but Microsoft's fiscal year is coming to an end. That happens on June 30th. So next week, Microsoft will close the financial books on its 2022 fiscal year and start 2023, and kind of got to keep that stuff straight. And so what does that mean? Aside from like the financial aspect, this is typically the time of the year where Microsoft, if they're going to make some org changes or shifts or move the deck chairs around, that is the time of the year that they do it. And so if those announcements are going to happen, look for them to land in the month of July. Also, we might start to see some shifts in how Microsoft is prioritizing efforts of the executive suite. This past fiscal year, we know that Satya Nadella, some of his compensation was tied directly to Game Pass subscriber growth, and so eventually we will learn what his initiatives are, at least as directed by the board of directors, for the fiscal year ahead. Now, we won't typically find that, I want to say it's like August, September, sometime around that timeline, but either way, then we'll understand where Microsoft is placing its bets for the year ahead and helps us understand what is going on in the world of Microsoft. There's also other things that happen typically towards the end of a fiscal year. On one hand, Microsoft has nothing happening. On the other hand, sometimes things just get shoved out the door. And what I mean by that is that executives and teams are aligned to like, hey, if you ship this product in a certain fiscal year, you'll get a bonus or it'll go towards your review. And so sometimes we see products just start getting shoved out the door. Viva sales last week could very well fall into that. We saw OneDrive or Defender for individuals also happening last week. Wouldn't be surprised if their target was 630. And so here we are, sort of launching some new product late in the month of June. That can explain why some of that happens. I'm not expecting a ton of stuff to happen between now and next week, but you never know. Sometimes sometimes they want to just get stuff out. So typically Microsoft likes to launch stuff on a Tuesday. If it's going to happen, keep your eyes peeled for Tuesday. So moving on from the end of the fiscal year stuff, there's just some other like bobs and bits that are floating around. First off, if you're still running Windows 8.1, God help you. I don't know why. I know that there's a small percentage of the world that likes to run Windows 8.1. I am not one of them. I don't understand it. But either way, Microsoft is going to start warning you that it is coming to an end. January 10th of 2023, you need to be off Windows 8.1. Go to Windows 10. It's a great OS. Now, granted, if you're really... I think going from 8.1 to 11 might be a big jump just from like the visual stuff. But hey, either way, you've got 10 or 11 to choose from. You just kind of got to get off 8.1 or just live dangerously in an unsupported world. On the Windows 11 side, there's a new Windows 11 Insider build that brings some more OneDrive information and subscription information into Windows 11, so you can see that from within the settings panel. And also on the Windows 11 side, if you're in Russia trying to download Windows 11, it's getting more difficult. The Insider builds are no longer working, or at least they're not being pushed down to you, and also finding ISOs can be a bit more tricky. That being said, if you're listening to this and you're in Russia, you probably already know how to find ISOs for Windows 11 and make all that stuff work. It's nothing too crazy, but it's Microsoft aligning to the policies based on what is happening in the geopolitical world. And so there we go. Microsoft also signaled this week that they will halt the sale of emotion reading tech and limit access to facial recognition tools. This has sort of been a hot button item especially in the policing state world. Like, hey, should they be able to just put a camera up, it knows who you are and can track you? There's some ethics in there, and so Microsoft is pulling back and saying, look, we don't want our technology used for that. They're definitely trying to play the favorable side of cards as they continue to navigate things in the political world, and so they're trying to stay on the positive side and not get the negative press, and so that is something that they have chosen to do. On to the gaming news. So there's been a lot of kind of stuff here, just kind of dribbling out. Microsoft is making an interesting pitch where they are very clearly targeting Edge as the gaming browser. They're including more features and positioning Edge to be like, hey, it's the best place to stream your games. And they've already done things we've seen like Clarity Boost and some other products come along there. But Microsoft is starting to roll out more Edge gaming focused features to the masses. And so again, that's just an interesting way to position what they are doing here. And Microsoft, you got to remember, Microsoft's vision is now roughly complete. Sure, they want to reduce latency. We saw some technology come out this week, or them talking about the technology with direct capture this week, but they've got it on every single screen. They've got it on TVs, as we know with Samsung, and fully expect that to come to more devices. But I believe they have an exclusive agreement with Samsung, at least initially, potentially as a launch partner. And we know that because Microsoft is also pushing ads now. They're actually investing dollars to promote this fact on Samsung TV. So there was some sort of an agreement there. I don't know if it was Samsung buying the exclusivity or Microsoft paying Samsung. I suspect it was Samsung paying Microsoft, but we don't know. We don't know the terms of that agreement. But either way, these two companies are working hand in hand to make it look like Samsung has the gaming TV, if you will, at the end of the day. That's kind of a big deal. Either way, now Edge is getting the gaming treatment, if you will, and so it just sort of completes Microsoft's gaming vision as a portfolio. Speaking of cloud gaming, Microsoft is bringing more keyboard support for mouse and keyboard support to cloud gaming, and so that is a big deal. Typically, you need to play a controller or on your device with a touchscreen, but mouse and keyboard support is a big attractor for a lot of people, and so be looking for more support on that. From a cloud gaming perspective. And finally, on the gaming side, Microsoft is warning about a control. I don't have a controller over here. The console, a controller shortage. I was going to hold it up as a prop, but as controller shortage primarily impacting Europe. It sounded like also like UK might be hit a little bit harder than the broader continent of Europe. But either way, if you need a controller, granted, while they don't claim that there's an issue yet here in the US, if you're in the US and you think, oh man, I should pick up another controller this fall, like now might not be a bad time to kind of go out there and just grab one to make sure you have it, because while it's supposedly not impacting here yet, I mean, logic will tell you if it's impacting Europe, there's a good chance it might impact the US at some point. Either way, that's just the latest in today's edition of Supply Chain Weekly of where things are coming up short. So those were the big kind of topics this week coming out of the world of Microsoft. Like I said, fiscal year coming to an end. And so let's dive into the questions of the week, which I was way late in posting. So appreciate everybody who dropped in. There's primarily Will R, because actually there were two comments. Because I published this way late. I got very distracted by some stuff we got going on next week at work. And so either way, Will R says, hey Brad, do you think Microsoft will give us an AMD option in the Surface Pro soon? No, I don't. Now, I say that and watch them go ahead and do that, but I believe that they are primarily sticking with Intel for the Surface Pro. They have a relationship in that regard, and they actually have a better, I shouldn't say better relationship, but they primarily set out their playing cards of like, hey, look, we're going to do a Surface Pro with Intel. We do the laptops with an AMD variant, and I think that's the model that they're going to be chasing for some time. So I don't expect them to. I'm not saying that it won't happen. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that naive, but typically Microsoft likes to stay the course that they are on, and so that would be what I would expect. He also says, Brad, and I've got some info on this, I've also heard a rumor that Xbox was working on a larger 2TB Series X, and that the updated Series X with new specs would be coming next year. Just curious if there might be any truth to these. The updated, I think people misread what the updated specs are, at least from what my understanding is. The updated specs are really just a revision rather than a true upgrade, if you know what I mean. Like there's multiple revisions of, I keep looking because there's an Xbox One right there, if you could hear that tapping. I've also got another one down. Anyways, I don't think that it's an update in the way that people think. At least that's my understanding as of right now. Also, the 2TB Series X is a thing, but I can't remember if it's related to the card directly. But either way, Microsoft has done storage updates and higher SKUs, and so typically this will be a good, better, best launch scenario if you're familiar with that business modeling, where they have an Xbox, they have the Series S, then they have a 1TB and a 2TB, and they're differently priced SKUs. Microsoft absolutely has contemplated and looked at this. I don't know if it's launching next year, but Microsoft is hearing loud and clear that, hey, storage is a problem. We all know about the expandability cards, but internal storage is always more optimal, because like myself, I just kind of delete games rather than actually just, buy an extra storage card, because those things aren't cheap. They're not cheap. So either way, to sum that up, I don't know if it's an updated spec coming next year, but the 2TB Series X is a thing that Microsoft has been pondering. I have heard that around the neighborhood. Somebody also asked, it was actually a Twitter DM, they said, hey, how are the stats on your podcast, since you have left doing like journalism full-time and now do software development for Windows as a full-time thing? And actually they're up a little bit. So roughly speaking, since I've left, it's at about maybe 75 to 100 listeners every week, something like that. Like this podcast, I would expect to land somewhere between 9,500 and 10,500 listeners, somewhere across all the mediums. So there's like, it's usually like 1,500, 2,000-ish on YouTube somewhere in that region, and then you can go look on SoundCloud. It's about the same. And then there's direct RSS feed, which is like your iTunes, your Google Play, your Spotify, like that is like another 6,000 to 7,000, something like that. And so it's kind of blowing up. I mean, I don't know. I love this. I will do this if I did this podcast only when my mom listened, and I will continue to do it if I'm just talking to myself and only my family is listening, because they're on the other side of this door and they're forced to hear this conversation with myself. Either way, guys, always appreciate the time. Thanks for tuning out or tuning in. We will catch all of you back here next week. We will see what the end of the fiscal year brings from Microsoft. It should be a good 2023 for Microsoft, hopefully for you as well, and we'll catch you next week.